This is part 2 of my interview with John on French Resistance reenacting at D-Day. In the first video, we talked about building a believable impression, developing a character and grounding in real history, and even restoring period-correct bicycles. In this video, however, we're getting into some of the more practical realities, firearms, backdating modern reproductions, and then zooming out into some bigger picture thoughts about what the French Resistance actually looked like during the occupation. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I would recommend starting there, but you can also jump in right here. Let's get into it. Okay, today I have John with us, and he obviously does French Resistance reenacting. So I wanted to ask, something that's often hard for people to get in their impression can be a period-correct firearm, and you have a unique solution. Now, not everyone should. If everyone in the Resistance had this firearm, it wouldn't be correct. But here's an interesting solution.
Okay, so what we have here is a German MP40, often mistakenly called the Schmeiser. Hugo Schmeiser had nothing to do with the design of this gun. Why it's called a Schmeiser is anybody's guess. So this is made by GSG, which is German sport guns out of Germany, and it's a semi-automatic only version of the MP40 of the World War II era. It comes in 9mm, which is a common caliber, and it's technically classified as a pistol, because if you notice here, there's just this round slug filling the end of the receiver, where on the full auto original versions there would be a folding buttstock. Well, under current law, if a pistol has a buttstock on it, then it becomes classified as a short-barreled rifle, and that requires licensing and paperwork and fees, and it's just easier not to bother. And if you do put one on without doing all the licensing and tax stamping and paying all the fees, you're looking for a visit from the ATF, and I don't recommend it. So if you get the bright idea of putting a buttstock on one of these, just divorce yourself from the idea right now.
And what did you do to backdate it? Because if I remember right, you said you had to do something to it.
Yes. So on this one, when they come from the factory, they come with this really gruesome, shiny black plastic furniture, like down here on the grips and here on the side panels. Well, the original ones came with Bakelite, which was a early form of plastic, and it was some kind of early polymer resin. But what set it apart was the use of cellulose in it, basically wood fibers, to use as a binder to hold everything together and make it a little more shatterproof. Because Bakelite was a real popular item back in the 20s and 30s for making things like ashtrays, little figurines, household doodads, spatula grips. And the Germans found that it was a great material once it was reinforced for gun parts. So like the grips on here are, you'll find the same material like on a P38 pistol. And they also used it for the scales on knives. But being the shiny black plastic on the modern guns, it just didn't look right and was just out of place. So I got to looking into what World War II German Bakelite looked like, and it was sort of a reddish brown color with what looked like little black fleckules in it, which was the wood fibers. So I got to looking at it and thought, okay, there's got to be a way to replicate that look. So, trip to Lowe's, checking out the myriad of colors over there in the spray paint section, and I found that a Rust-Oleum Kona Brown does a good job of replicating the base color, the sort of reddish brown. But then I was faced with, okay, so how do you get the sort of black fleckule look? So after some experimentation on some odd scraps of wood, what I discovered was that you take whatever part you're working on, spray it down at a distance of about, 8 to 10 inches to get that initial base coat. So while it's still wet and before it has a chance to start curing, that's where you take your flat black spray paint, but stand off maybe about 18 to 24 inches and just spray it in the general direction to sort of create a cloud, because you don't want to top coat it. You just want all the little paint particles to land on what you did. So if you look carefully, you can see that it is indeed sort of a reddish brown with a sort of a blackish little flecule look on top of it. And that's how you replicate World War II German Bakelite.
Well, that's a nice trick to know. Now that we've talked about a bunch of these things, do you have a nugget of wisdom or an insight you want to share about reenacting that you'd want to share with possible future reenactors?
Well, you wouldn't be thinking about being a reenactor if you didn't already have a love of history. All the politics aside, history is there to be preserved and learned from, and to emulate the good things and avoid the bad things. It's about knowledge. And once you start getting into it, you'll find that every nugget of information you learn opens up a fresh rabbit hole to go exploring down.
It's almost like being a little detective almost of the history as you go.
Exactly. So you start off looking for one thing, you find something else, and that leads you off in a different direction. And before you know it, especially if you're just on the internet looking things up, 4 hours have gone by, but you've managed to glean up so much information that'll be useful to you sometime in the future. And it doesn't matter if it's on what something looked like, what people of that era were wearing, and a lot of times you'll find out interesting things about what they were thinking that go against conventional wisdom. So it's like French resistance, okay? Everybody's got the idea that, okay, the Germans marched in and everybody in France joined the resistance to help push them out. That's not exactly true, because if you look at the history of what was going on through the 20s and 30s, France was in a state of political turmoil. Every couple of years there was a new government with different ideas trying to implement their programs, overturning the programs of the previous government. And you had communists, you had royalists, you had Christian Democrats, you had Republicans, and a whole host of splinter groups therein. So from the day-to-day political life of France was just a cauldron. The Germans come rolling in. There was a large segment of the French population were of the opinion that, and it's in diaries, and a lot of famous authors of that era pretty much shared this viewpoint too, that it was like basically, oh, thank God the Germans are here. Finally, somebody's going to restore order and make things normal again. Because that's all the people wanted. And then after the Germans took control, France sort of evolved into groups of just three distinct mentalities. The one group was those who resisted and took the attitude of like, okay, these Germans do not belong here, and we're going to do everything we can to send them packing back across the Rhine. Then you had the large middle group who just kind of shrugged their shoulders and took the attitude of like, I don't care what they do, just leave me alone and everything will be fine. And then you had the others who were sort of the collaborationist attitude, is like, okay, the Germans are here and I'm going to do everything I can to get along with them and somehow profit from their presence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you.
All righty, Andrew, well, thank you. And if some point in the future it's possible for me to come back, I'd be honored to do another show with you.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, sir. Well, hey, thank you very much.
Thank you. This wraps up my conversation and time with John. What I appreciate about this interview isn't just the gear or the techniques, it's remembering that reenacting isn't about costumes or props, it's about understanding the complexities, it's about wrestling with the uncomfortable truths, and it's about getting closer to what people were actually thinking and living through at that time during German occupation in France. History is rarely simple, and the French Resistance is a perfect example of that. If you found this discussion valuable, make sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with somebody who is interested in history, the French Resistance, reenacting, or anything along those lines. This is Brave Builds, where history, kit, and reenacting all come together to help us build a better understanding of their bravery, because their stories deserve to be remembered.